Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
It's pretty amazing. Every time I talk to this guy, I learn something more phenomenal about his career and things that he's done. And I'm talking about architect John Riggio, who is an accomplished architect in the country, specifically in the New York metro area. And John is back with us today. John, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Nice to see you, Steve.
You too. Great to have you back. And a while ago, we started talking about your career path. Now, of course, you have a very successful architectural firm, and you've been designing buildings, commercial, residential, for decades. But we rewound and we started with what was going to be your career, or you thought it was going to be your career, as a tennis pro. When you were in your 20s, you were a tennis pro, which is mind-boggling. Like, legit, the guy was playing tennis with professionals. But then there's stories that come off of that, including the tennis bubble at a stadium, right? Can we go back to that and kind of go a little more depth?
Yes. Yeah, there's a few stories. One is the tennis bubble that was over at Sutton East, and they had this big grandstand that was wood, and it was specially designed, all painted red. What happened? That tennis bubble had to leave the tennis center. There was problems with keeping it there, and it had to do with code issues. Really, it didn't have to do with playing tennis. So they had to move it. And what happened was, instead of moving it, it was sold. It was sold to a corporation, development company. And from what I was able to notice is that the red grandstand was repurposed. They had some designers take the grandstand and present it, and it ended up in Times Square in New York City.
So
and then they had renovated. They put glass on top and made the whole thing completely different.
but that actual structure that came from the tennis bubble, is a lot of it, or a good portion of it, the same structure that's in Times Square, New York City now?
It was originally put there. It was put there, and then I noticed it was completely renovated. So I don't know if the structure is really existing at all. Or maybe from some people who were there and using the grandstand could really take a look at it and know more information. As a player, I don't know all that detail about the construction of it and how it looks. But that is what happened. Is that it was there with wood, and then it was completely redesigned with glass, so it looks different.
So that grandstand, or the tennis bubble, is where you used to play back in the day.
And even one of the flat screens, that they had, is one of the flat screens there in Times Square. I'm not sure which one it is.
When did that get moved? Like, okay, so
yes, one of the flat screens that was there, that was being used, it was really in front of the grandstand, is now somewhere. I don't know if it's behind it or on the side, but one of the screens is there.
When did they dismantle, shut down, move that tennis bubble? About what year was that?
It took a number of years. I think it was sold, and then I don't know what the time frame was, but I think it eventually got there in like the year 1999 or something like that. But it was sold, and they had to put it in some kind of planning and everything.
Wow.
I wasn't following too closely, but I just realized that going back on my tennis years, and I was walking through Times Square, and I just realized the whole story, what was going on with that. So what happened was, the whole thing with the grandstand leaving wasn't really such a sad thing, because they started the construction of the tennis stadium there at the old Polo Grounds in Manhattan, and that whole thing was already planned, approved, everything, and constructed.
For that tennis bubble, it has, I guess, special meaning for you, because that's.
And I think one interesting thing about the whole thing with the stadium, because I think if someone looked around to find where the stadium plans, where's the approval, there was this building there in Manhattan I think it was sort of like Midtown to the west, a very large building, and they said it was built too large somehow. They wanted them to take like 5 stories off the top of the building. And then when they researched, they said they can't find a building permit. They said, where is the building permit? It isn't in the usual building department. and just to solve that problem, what happens is really the building department, they have really a special, like you'd say, a special
Division, like a
department. Yes, a special
okay.
division that any large size building, any important building is really going to another department. And I think that's probably like, so there isn't a big thing about people looking at what they're doing and everything, but that is usually how it works. In fact, some of the largest skyscrapers in Manhattan are really, their plans are really put to another building department. In fact, I know the address of where it is, but I don't want to say it because I think the whole thing is really supposed to be kept more like, say, like insider trading, or say like corporate information. So not they don't. I think they didn't come out and say how that was permitted, and yet they can't find it. But that is really what's going on.
I want to make sure I have this clear. So, building in New York City is
Yes.
5 stories too tall, or that's what they say. Already constructed at this point.
Yes, that building was constructed.
So we have a multi-story building. I don't know how many stories it is, but
Yeah, it was in the news. There was this building in Manhattan just recently, and they wanted them to take 5 stories off the building, and they didn't understand where they got the permit. This story leaked out into the news,
Jeez.
but it isn't untypical. It's a standard, and like so all the, I was explaining. I know a lot of companies that were building some of the largest structures, and that is how I know all about it. And yeah, in fact, I have some permits in the other department, but that's usually how it works. And they usually don't want to tell people about it because of that reason. It's probably going to interfere with their work too much.
So I have to just, and for all of us to understand that better. So we have this, again, it's kind of mind blowing. We have a tall building in New York City that it's been determined that it's 5 stories too high. Apparently they built it too high based on the permit. We can't find the permit. That's a different situation.
Yes.
How would they remove the 5 stories? If somebody said, yeah, right here, permit's right here. You're 5 stories too tall. Take it down.
Yeah, in fact, they can dismantle it. Like they were going to say they would dismantle building to completely remove the whole building from the site. They could just dismantle 5 stories and then just put a new roof on. That is completely believable. They do things like that all the time. Now, I think there was some other stories in the news where they had some buildings, I've heard of some 5-story, 6-story buildings that did not have any building permit in any of the departments.
Wow.
And that happens too. And I think that happens because of another reason, that when someone initiates to build a new building, all of a sudden everyone comes running over and they want to stop the project. So I've heard of some buildings, they tried to build the whole thing without a permit, and then they end up, when they get caught, if they get caught by the building department, they have a big problem, and then they would have all kinds of violations they'd have to clear. But I guess as far as they're concerned, it might be, maybe it's worth it. They would try to build the building before someone stops it. So that is one interesting thing that happens too.
Yeah, and even on the the residential side, I've been there where I moved into a house and there weren't proper permits, so things had to be changed, or there was. I'll even tell you that the whole permit process is so crazy that when I moved into the previous house before the last house, there wasn't a permit to build a shed. So what the previous homeowner did, so I could buy the house, he put the shed on PVC pipe and rolled it to like the middle of the lawn. And when I moved in, we just moved it back. Eventually I got a permit for it. But in the last house, I just sold the house like 2 months ago, not even. I renovated the backyard and found out that a pergola, which really isn't a permanent structure, $1,500 at Costco, and if I ran and pushed it, it would fall down. I needed to get a permit for that, and I needed to pay taxes on that. And I also found out that if you have in this town, if you have a large deck box, like the Rubbermaid deck boxes, if it's big enough, you need to pay taxes on that, and you might need a permit. It's the things you learn, you figure out. Yeah, phenomenal, interesting stuff. And so, and I just learned this before we jumped on here, you know, as an architect, you've done so much before you jumped into architecture, but you were a pilot. Do I have that right? Like a licensed pilot?
Yes. So what happened was I knew that architect work was one feature that I can take, and but there was some new industries coming up. One was the airline industry and aviation, and the other one was computers. So I was trying both computers and aviation to see if I can get a career in that. So when I learned the aviation, I went to a special school through the public school, and I was doing excellent. At first, I was just going to work on uh, finding the luggage. They have all this whole thing of luggage in the airport and luggage, like the logistics of luggage. But what happened was, as I started to take the course, it turns out I was an excellent pilot, and I was number one in my class, and I was able to progress very well with flying an airplane. But what happened, what was funny is, so at the same time I'm taking this course, I'm also playing pro tennis. And I go to the airport over there in Farmingdale, Long Island, and I'm on the taxiway. I get over, ready to take off, and I look to my left, and I see another airplane waiting there. And I look in the windshield, and I see someone there. I said, "That's Bjorn Borg." I said, "What is he doing in the airplane?"
That is pro, right?
Yeah, so then later that week, at that time I was playing with Beyond Boy. I was training with him. He was one of my like instructors, and it turns out a lot of people were really pilots.
Wow.
In particular, two people I was playing with at that time was Lendl and Ivan Lendl and Beyond
Yvonne
Boy.
Lendl,
They
yeah.
both airline pilots, that not airline pilots, they're private pilots. They do, just residential for their own use.
Wow.
And so that was it. And then I was looking around, and I see there's a few other people in pro tennis that are also taking their airplanes, and also pro sports. They're getting in their airplanes and flying there from Long Island. So it was really amazing who I was flying with. And so that was good. So in fact, them flying an airplane, playing the same sport, pro sport, and myself playing the pro sport was pretty good. I was aligned very well to do that, because everyone was getting into the same things. And they were all flying very small airplanes, just like a little single engine airplane.
Yeah.
And we were flying. That was really interesting. That was amazing. And
Well,
and then I think from flying an airplane, you would start to maybe imagine that flying an airplane somehow keeps your pro tennis career going. But I think I ended up stopping the airline flying. I think I went far enough with the airline flying. I wasn't going to get into commercial airline piloting. It wasn't formed to it. And what I did was I stopped that, but my tennis career continued on. I was still playing for a number of years after that. So the coincidence of flying an airplane and playing pro tennis had nothing to do with each other. But although everyone liked it, I think it was very, like it's a real adventure to fly at a young age like that.
sure.
I think if you're older to get in the airplane, it's probably difficult to take those kind of chances. Or just to get in like a little airplane like that and flying around was really very dangerous. It was amazing.
I wonder if there's a connection between the aptitude you have to play tennis and to fly. I don't know if there's a connection there, but I mean, you mentioned those names. I hardly play tennis, but Bjorn Borg, Yvonne Lendl, those are big names. I mean, those were really, when you talk about tennis players, if you want to give, the list of the top 10 or top 15 top players in history, they probably would be on the list. John McEnroe, right? I mean, they would be on the list. That's amazing. In fact,
Well, he didn't fly an airplane, but yes, this is. But in fact, yeah. Well, they're the two people I was playing with. They are, of course, very well known in the area, and yeah. So so there's all kinds of athletes flying airplanes over there in Farmingdale. It was really amazing.
Wow. And you still, to the day, you still give lessons occasionally and you still play.
Yes, I do. Yes,
Wow.
yes, I'm playing regularly each week. The flying is over with, but I'm still playing tennis.
Is there an indoor facility that you go to in the wintertime to continue playing?
There is a number of indoor tennis bubbles here in New Jersey with this big pay, and I usually stay outdoors for the summer and the winter. And would you believe it, the pros, other pros that I was playing, they really don't, we don't all run into the indoor courts. I was playing outdoors in the middle of the winter. I
Wow.
think when you're young, you don't really care too much about the cold weather. So I used to play in the cold weather, and although there's some more indoor facilities, I think the new indoor facility they have there at the U.S. Tennis Center of Flushing was pretty good. I was playing indoors there during the winter for a while, and as I came back to play, I did pretty good. But I won a couple tournaments there and a couple of leagues. I was playing pretty good for starting to return to play, and yeah, that's a pretty good indoor. They don't pay with that, so that's good. And but right now I've been trying to stay outdoors right now. Maybe I'll look to see if I can do something with the indoor bubble. And
As
yeah,
an
because there was that story with the Ali Palm bubble. I think I didn't really say the story with that, but there is an unbelievable story that took place. There was so they built that Ali Pond Park. They built the tennis building with the showers, the entrance lobby area, $3,000 desk. Had this whole glass wall looking onto the courts, so 6 courts with the new bubble. And what happened was everything was going very good there. I think I told you so about I made friends with Helena Sokova from Switzerland, and she was rooting me on. She used to sit at my desk, and everything was going very good. And they had a building manager that he would open the door in the morning, and he would watch the whole place, make sure everything is clean at night, and lock it before we go. And that was good. I think during that time there was like these little stories. Like I had my girlfriend and her father. They were pretty serious. We were pretty serious about getting married, and then they came over to the tennis center and everything. That was a pretty big highlight. Yeah, my girlfriend was at that time was in fact she was really the beauty queen for the local area where I lived. She was really amazing. And
Wow.
yes, so what happened there is the problem with why the tennis center closed was really a sad story. The building manager, he got himself in big trouble by doing improper sexual conduct with one of the boy players, which was like 17 years old.
Wow.
So what happened was he's got himself in trouble, and so the months went on. I was still teaching different players. Everything was good. And then one day I was walking out of the tennis bubble, the center, going out the door of the building, and he just wants to tell me that he just got off the phone, and he says he's not gonna let them take me. He says. And I said, "What do you mean he's not gonna let him take me?" He said he's not gonna let himself get arrested because of this offense, because he said he had this kind of problem once before. So I encouraged him. I said, let them, arrest you, and you're gonna make it. You're not nothing's gonna happen to you. Because I think the kid that this happened with, it turned out to be a pretty sad situation, and the kid wasn't really it wasn't too good story. So what happened was he was like no prostitute. So what happened was a few days later I received a phone call. I have a date and time to teach a new player, and it was very exciting. They said there's a new player to teach. So I was driving there in the early morning, and for some reason that morning it was raining, it was cold, and there was like fog on the road. And I get there, it's like really creepy. And I get there and I park the car and I start walking towards the tennis bubble, and then someone opens the door and walks out. And it's really it's the supervisor of the parks department walks out of the building, and he tells me, you mean I'm not allowed to go in there anymore? He said that the manager committed suicide. So
Wow.
he, so he died. And
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 they
that was,
they closed the center after that, shortly after it.
yes, what happened is the center had to move.
Okay. Wow.
In fact, I offered to take over that job. I thought I could do both jobs. I could work as the manager and I could play there. You just give me the key. I could take care of the whole place. I'll vacuum it, it doesn't bother me. But that was not a possibility because it was really run by the city government. The city government was taking care of all the maintenance of that whole building, and they would have to get someone who has like a college degree in park management and everything like that. It was a serious position.
Hmm.
So in the meantime, we didn't have time for that. We had to move it. We moved it back to the tennis center very shortly, and then it was over at the new Sutton at this the Sutton East. They had to build a new building entrance there too, and so I had to wait a short time for that. They had to build a new entrance there, and everything worked really good there. That was much more permanent, and that stayed there. It's still there today. Now the alley pond, what they did at the building that was there, they didn't demolish it or anything. It just stayed there, and then it was sold to someone involved with tennis that put a new bubble on it, and they've been running it for a long time. In fact, that tennis bubble has grown. It's the largest in the USA. So
Yeah,
my
I
so
think of
my
John
so my building that I started, they continued it on, did very nice work, and it's the largest.
with your tennis background and architecture. Have you ever thought about blending the two and consulting around the country or the world on either tennis stadiums or tennis facilities and things like that?
Well, as far as sports, doing design of sports stadiums, things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, something in that area, since it's you're familiar with tennis, and that's one sport. But on the architecture side, yeah, just a thought, like you what about being a consultant for projects like that? Just
Yeah,
because
I
you
could
have,
do that. Sure, if
yeah.
that opportunity came about, yes, I can do something like that. Certainly, yeah. It hasn't happened yet, but it's always a possibility. If someone was interested in that, yeah, I
Yeah.
could do that.
Yeah, just a an offshoot of what you do in terms of architecture, and just because you have the passion for sports. But what a what a career! I mean, going from professional sports player, it's not easy to get a pilot's license either, at all. I mean, I've got friends who flew probably right around the time you had your license. Not kidding. They haven't flown since then because it was just too
Yes,
much stress. And I still remember the one day with that one friend I'm referring to, and he did a solo takeoff and landing. I was in the plane at the time.
yes.
Never seen anybody more nervous in my life. And my friend Dave, we landed the plane. I think maybe he flew a couple of times after that, and then never again. So
Yeah,
it's
that happens a lot. It's that is yes, that is typical. People start things like that, and then it's some people. It takes certain skills. It's difficult to do. Yes.
Yeah. Or you just realize that, wait a minute, I don't know if I can do this and feel comfortable doing it. Because there's so many different variables when you're landing a plane, the wind conditions, everything is different. It's not a cut and dry kind of thing.
Yeah, just not to leave my girlfriend on. You know what happened? My girlfriend and her father used to play ITF. He used to play, which is like a minor league of pro tennis, and he and so his daughter, Delilah Yoon, from same neighborhood I lived in, they were really happy, and he was hoping to really have this continue where we get married. And so that's why they were there. They were really happy to come and see me.
Wow. And the ITF, International Tennis Foundation.
Oh, the IT, yes, that's correct. Yes,
Yeah. And I remember that too from back in the day. And I don't know why I'm remembering these things. And even
I played ATP. That's really the major
yeah,
league is ATP.
and I don't play tennis and I know those things. Not that I know a lot, but that's how big they are in terms of are those federations still around?
Yes, they are.
Wow. Wow.
This just recently, the ITF has now merged with the USTA. They're giving everyone a ITF number. It's something new they're doing this year. I
Hmm.
think maybe with the slowdown with the COVID, the whole thing has taken where the USTA has come under some financial problem, and the ITF is now assisting with them, and they are ranking all the players.
We're just about out of time, but I got to ask you this, John. Do you ever look back at your tennis career in the very beginning and think to yourself, probably should have continued that? I mean, I know
Well,
you.
in fact, of course, I always
Yeah.
want to continue, but in fact, it was out of my control to really
Okay.
continue playing as a pro, and there was
Yeah.
nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
There was the only after my career had stopped, the only last chance was to go to California, and I hope I can somehow get picked up with a
Yep.
new sponsor there. The sponsor was there, but I think that wasn't really that uh, a solid way to go there.
Yeah.
So that's why that did not take place. Although I wished that would be wonderful to do that. And sure, that is good.
It's funny how your life and career path goes because I was going to be a syndicated cartoonist. I was that close to getting that done, very close. Probably about the same age you were playing tennis, and I went down the radio road and I've continued doing that my whole life. But people do ask me, it's like, why? How come you never continued, drawing cartoons and doing graphics? And I said, "Well, I loved it. Um, but could I make a life out of it and a career? And I guess I didn't think so. Maybe you thought maybe that, on the tennis side, it's not as easy to continue and progress with that. So then we chose different paths. And it looks like as an architect with your accomplishments that you found your life purpose, but it's great that you had that opportunity to do tennis in the beginning too. And you still do.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
John, always fascinating talking with you. I learn something new all the time. Even
Yes,
the pilot.
there's a lot. There's a lot of stories. A lot of stories. There's the tennis and everything was a compacted time. It was like every year was really like 4 years.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stories to tell.
Yeah. And then the next question is, how come we're both wearing the same shirt? How did that happen? Look at you. It's
Oh
almost,
yeah,
isn't that
it's a
weird?
professional shirt.
Yeah. I don't know. It almost looks like the same shirt.
Yes.
John, always great talking with you. If you want to find out about what he does in terms of architecture, if you're looking to make a change, either if you have a commercial building or residential, John Riggio, RIGGIO.com is where you can find him. And look forward to hearing some more stories and connecting with you sometime in the near future there, John.
Great. Thanks so much. It was excellent talking to you. Thanks.
You too. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.